Hello, everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into syncing all your marketing and sales platforms. I'm Tony Ogg from Nimble Gravity, and today we're tackling the core challenges sales and marketing executives face, from understanding data disconnects to battling churn. So let's embark on this transformative journey. Before we delve deeper, I'd love for our esteemed panel to introduce themselves. Let's start with Tomas Martin and Alec Hazi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tomasz Martin, and I'm a data engineer here at Highfly Labs. And it's probably one of the mottos of ours that describes us at best. We are engineering data solutions and building apps that make an impact.
And hey, everybody, my name is Alec Hazi. I lead product marketing here at Hightouch. Hightouch is a reverse ETL, or data activation company, as we like to say it. And we'll actually dive into the tool a lot more a little bit later in the webinar, so you all can get a feel of exactly what we do.
Great. And I'm Tony Ogg from Nimble Gravity. We are a strategy, data science, and digital consulting company that helps our clients turn data into information, into insight and action. In having worked in and with a variety of companies over the years, it's almost always a struggle to bring data from marketing and CRM systems into a centralized place to truly understand uh, what's happening with the customer. So whether it's simply getting the data out of those systems to sometimes joining it together, these things become difficult because we don't always name customers the same way in different systems or have some nice universal ID across systems. And sometimes one extract, uh, it has most of this information, but not quite everything you need, et cetera. So often these problems span multiple teams that own these different systems. Sometimes different system owners need to be consulted with. So it makes these problems hard to resolve, despite the huge amount of value that bringing data from different systems can generate. So one kind of quintessential example of this value is being able to predict when customers might be at a high likelihood of churning. So let's say for a software as a service or SaaS product, are they going to not renew, or are they going to cancel their subscription? So imagine it would, that kind of churn prediction would really benefit from things like, does the customer actually use the product? How often? What areas of the product are they using? Does the customer contact the support team? Like, how many tickets have they opened? And then, maybe even marketing content. Are they interacting with how-to videos and what's new campaigns, those kind of things. So, kind of those types of information about the customer behavior combined with a transaction history of knowing who has historically actually churned, which might come from yet another system. So you have, in this case, information from, a Pendo or a mix panel measuring product usage, Zendesk or something like that for the support information, and then information from a Zorro or a ChargeBee or some other system about the transactions and payments and these things. So combining all those things together would be incredibly helpful for a marketing team, or maybe even critical for the entire company to know if people are churning. Yet combining that data together is kind of a historically challenging problem, because it involves so many different sales and marketing platforms. So today's webinar is, we're going to dive much deeper into the power of how to do those things and how to do that. So now before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about a couple of questions. So the first one, Tomasz, from your perspective, what's the most significant change you've seen in the data management sector in recent years?
Well, it pretty much depends on what counts as recent years, but without a doubt, the most significant change in the data management sector has to be credited to the arrival of groundbreaking data technologies that enabled us to start thinking outside the box. I'm referring mainly to big data technologies such as Hadoop that forefronted the data lake revolution, and with the advancement of the cloud gained further traction to entirely rewire the way we think regarding data. Thanks to them, these days it's completely normal for even small companies to have terabytes of data available to analyze at their fingertips without breaking the bank. This would have been hardly imaginable even a decade ago. Taking this into consideration, I would name both big data and the cloud itself as the most significant change in recent years.
Great, I agree. And Alec, how do you think businesses are coping with the kind of speed of change in this data syncing realm?
Yeah. So kind of tacking on to what Tomas said, and we'll talk through this a lot more today in the webinar as well, but as more and more organizations are investing in really centralizing all of their data into cloud technologies like the Snowflakes, the Databricks, the BigQueries of the world, they have a need now to actually go and power those downstream business operations, right? So I can take all the things and all the insights, to your point, churn score, right? And I can go and actually use those to operationalize things down funnel, like marketing personalization or sales operations. So technologies like reverse ETL have emerged to really help teams sync that data out at scale.
Great. So now we're going to hear from Tomas about the evolution of a data solution. So let me turn it over to Tomas.
Just a moment, I'm having a bit of technical difficulties.
No worries.
So, before we can explore the depths of the ins and outs of the main topic for today, I would like to give you some introduction to the whole landscape we will be talking about. Now, don't worry, this discussion is strictly a non-technical one, but it's rather important for all of us to be on the same page, so please bear with me. I don't think it's a surprise to any one of us that the cloud is here to stay, and talking about migrating to it is starting to become old news. But keep in mind that even some 15 years ago, on-premise solutions were dominating the market, as they were the only feasible way to go if you wanted to be on top of your game. It was sufficient for the needs of the time, and so costly traditional data warehouses towered over the landscape of analytics. Unfortunately, this world was rather limited, however, as valuable information was only accessible through complex authentication and delivery solutions, and thus processed data was not readily available for use on a day-to-day basis for everyone. Data was being collected, data was being processed, and processed data was being presented using increasingly interactive reporting tools while still staying within a rather technical realm logged inside heavily fortified networks. There was much more potential in data than what was being tapped. As technology got more and more advanced and affordable, high-end solutions became widely available at a reasonable price for everyone to use. In 2006, Amazon launched AWS, and as their services became available to the public, considering cloud-based infrastructure suddenly became a reality. This shift in mindset led to the emergence of cloud solutions that started to spread across the business applications and the world of data as well. With vast adoption of the cloud and infrastructure-less business solutions, new challenges began to show their heads. These challenges, however, were different. We were not simply trying to figure out how to solve something that worked fine in older architectures. We were finding newer and newer ways to use our data to our advantage, and we wanted to have as much of it as possible available at our fingertips. These days, it's completely common for both tiny startups and multi-billion-dollar companies to have their entire suite of business and technical applications running as either as a software as a service solution or hosted entirely at a cloud provider. These cloud-based solutions are known for their scalability, versatility, adaptability, and of course, outstanding cost for value, putting them at the center of our businesses. At the core of the modern data stack, as they are called, are advanced processing engines paired with cheap storage solutions, both made feasible with the virtually limitless capacity offered by the cloud. This approach provided a much more open model. Some great examples of these platforms are solutions based on Databricks, Snowflake, or even the recently announced Microsoft Fabric. The emergence of the modern data stack also brought with it a boom of tools that made it easier and easier for technical and also non-technical people to exploit the huge value they were sitting on top of, that is, their data assets. This new approach to data, however, was still bound to the limitations of traditional reporting and analysis solutions. Sales and marketing people, for example, were still getting their reports the old-fashioned way, and the so-called last mile of data activation was still missing. This is exactly where the topic of this discussion comes into play, and the way these limitations were overcome is with the use of something called reverse ETL. To define what reverse ETL is, we first need to understand what traditional ETL is and where it fits into the picture. At its core, ETL stands for extract, transform, and load, ET and L, and this exactly is its function. This can be considered as the beating heart of a data ecosystem, as ETL processes, sometimes called ETL pipelines or data pipelines, are responsible for supplying new data into data storage solutions where analytics can be done on them. ETL processes take information from your marketing and sales systems along with a myriad of other systems, commonly referred to as source systems, do their magic on the data and load it into your data warehouse for further analysis and processing. If you hear the term ELT, then it's really a similar thing. It's just named differently since operations in a modern data environment are changed up a bit, as modern data warehousing solutions such as data lakehouses built on top of advanced technologies like Databricks and Delta tables do things differently, storing data first before applying transformations to them later. So basically, ETL is the process of taking data from your source systems, applying transformations to them, and storing them in your data platforms for further processing to gain business insight and additional value. Reverse ETL, on the other hand, does the complete opposite of ETL, hence its name. Reverse ETL, at its very essence, is the process of taking data that has either been processed, cleansed, or is the very output of analysis tasks from your data warehouse and loading it back into your business applications. The whole goal of reverse ETL is to drive actionable data to downstream systems. Reverse ETL practices enable you to have all kinds of data, including processed analytics, available in business software without the need for external reporting applications, streamlining business processes, and enabling you to use your data proactively in native business applications. Well, reverse ETL is not something that popped into existence out of the blue. It has been with us for a long time, one way or another, but the way we solve these tasks have matured over the years immensely. In the past, it has been a common practice to build custom pieces of code, leveraging the available interfaces or APIs in the business applications to load them up with insightful data. The problem with this approach was that APIs are prone to change, and maintaining such pipelines becomes a hassle in the long run. Keeping up with the ever-changing landscape of custom code puts a lot of pressure on data teams, driving up hidden costs, and also poses a risk of error that could manifest in actual damage to the business. Some applications even provide ways to connect them together directly with other applications without central data solution. This again is possible through the use of these various APIs, but doing so greatly increases complexity. This unnecessary and excess complexity was realized, and solutions appeared on the market to overcome this, especially so when talking about customer data. These solutions wanted to become the center of all customer data needs, and thus customer data platforms, or CDPs, were born. These solutions overcame the web of data pipelines that point-to-point architecture posed, but were still very limited in function, as only customer data was synchronized between applications. Integrating everything into a common data platform has always been the best solution, and with the advent of the modern data stack, specialized and highly capable applications fine-tuned to provide the most seamless experience with reverse ETL appeared on the market. These applications aimed to streamline reverse ETL processes by taking the burden of maintaining complete compatibility with the business application APIs off of data teams, and by doing so, providing easy-to-use tools for integration of processed data back into business applications. With this, a true so-called hub-and-spoke architecture came to be, where all processed data originates from a single source of truth. As usual with cloud-based solutions, not just one good set of tools appeared on the market. As of now, there are many great reverse ETL suites out there that are more than capable of solving various aspects of all reverse ETL needs, each having their strengths and sometimes weaknesses. There are some outstanding names, however, out there, including market leaders like Census, Hivo, and of course, Hightouch. And with this, I give you back to Tony to explore these concepts even further.
Thanks, Tomasz. So, while moving data has been simplified dramatically during this evolution that Tomas just walked us through. You'll see in a minute from Alec, the persisting challenge lies in understanding when to use these technologies, when to use reverse ETL. So it's about knowing which data to move, its destination, the optimal cleanup process, deciding how much history to move, particularly if processes have changed, how to handle cases where a field in your data used to be freeform and now it's a list of values. Those types of things make these projects complicated. The good news is that we now have tools that can help us with those challenges. So the decision-making process for when and how to leverage reverse ETLs is crucial, especially when thinking about actions like the previous one of mitigating churn, or upsell, cross-sell type use cases as well, where it may have a huge impact, positive impact to the business, or even customer 360s to better understand the customer. This is where consulting comes into play, and where experts like the folks at the Highfly Labs or Nimble Gravity can help you prioritize where to start or prioritize where not to start, and where you'll have the most impact to the business, as well as most readiness from a data perspective. So to dive deeper into some example use cases, I'll now turn it over to Alec. Alec?
Yep. Can you all see my screen? Cool. So as we've talked about in the webinar today, the cloud data warehouse is really changing everything. So leaders like Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, and the rapid emergence of what's now called the modern data stack has enabled organizations to store data across their many functions cheaper and more efficiently than ever before in one central location. So while all the capabilities were in place to store, model, and analyze data in the warehouse, as Tomas mentioned before, there was this final mile missing, reverse ETL, or data activation, as we like to call it, to send data out to all of your many sales and marketing use cases. So a little bit behind Hightouch, at its core, Hightouch is powered by a technology coined reverse ETL. And to put that simply, we take data from your data warehouse and we pass that down to over 200 pre-built destinations. So we started out by focusing on really empowering data teams who define queries, which are also called data models, using SQL statements. We then run these queries against your data source, which is primarily your data warehouse, and send any updates out to your select destinations. So our platform handles all the scheduling and the field mapping to make data activation really seamless for any modern data team. And the beauty of this approach is that it's all warehouse centric. So only SQL is required to go and actually activate that data from your source to your many destinations. There's no need to set up any new databases, and teams get confidence that they're working from, again, that single source of truth being the cloud data warehouse. So just diving into a couple of use cases here. The first one that we see most often, at least from my stance, is omni-channel personalization. So for my lifecycle marketing team specifically, they want to create personalized experiences that connect really deeply with their customers. And we all know that best-in-class experiences like Spotify Wrapped are entirely driven by customer data. So these teams want to take the data that their team has centralized in the warehouse and send it down to the downstream applications that it's needed in, like Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, or ad platforms like Facebook, to actually go and deliver those personalized experiences using that customer data. Now, the second use case is ad spend optimization, typically seen from performance marketing teams. So we all know that ad platforms and the broader internet is shifting away from a reliance on third-party cookies. And ad platforms specifically are really building their systems to all center on first-party customer data. Well, organizations need to actually get that first-party data to the ad platforms to do things like close attribution loops by sending in enriched conversion events to what are called conversion APIs, or syncing customer lists or audiences to do things like retargeting, suppression, or lookalike targeting. Again, all of that first-party data is being stored centrally in the cloud data warehouse, and it just needs this activation layer to come in and actually send it down to those downstream tools. Now, the last one, the last use case that we're going to highlight here today is sales optimization. And typically, that's seen from like a sales ops or a rev ops team. Organizations use data points like a churn propensity or product engagement events that they're collecting to go and power operational use cases like alerting their field, their AEs or their SEs when certain things happen. To do upsell messaging, maybe someone's underutilizing a product, or prospecting in general. So again, across all three of these, taking the data that they've stored centrally in the warehouse and now passing it to your downstream system. Each of these is exactly the same concept, but many different use cases and different applications across various functions within an organization. Now, today we'll spend some time diving a little deeper into one specific use case that falls mostly under the last sales ops category, and that's churn score activation. So today it's fairly common for B2B organizations to invest in advanced modeling or machine learning models to predict things like a churn propensity. And just to reiterate for those who aren't aware, it essentially estimates the likelihood of a customer to leave in the next period of X amount of time. So this score, while left in the data warehouse alone, helps to predict things like annual revenue, which is incredibly helpful for organizations to get an understanding of. But by activating it, it unlocks far greater value across teams to do things like, again, power those sales and operational use cases that we talked through on the last slide. So in today's example, we're going to take a look at how easy it is to use a data point like churn propensity in the cloud data warehouse and actually go and send that down to a tool like a Salesforce or a Slack to keep field teams updated while firing off that Slack alert to notify the team in real time once a certain churn risk threshold has been crossed. So you can see an example of what we'll actually show and walk through today is that bottom right image, where you can see an actual Slack alert that can fire off from your cloud data warehouse from that churn risk score, all using Hightouch. And we dog food this a ton internally at Hightouch. This is what powers a lot of our field and sales op operations. So first, before we dive in, I really want to make sure everyone gets a basic understanding of reverse ETL, just from a little bit more of a technical perspective. So there's really four main concepts to understand here. The first is a source. So a source is wherever business data is stored. Again, that's most commonly your data warehouse, but it can also be things like Google Sheets. Now, jumping to the far right side of the diagram here, the last is a destination. So a destination is a tool or service that receives data from the source. And just to reiterate, Hightouch integrates with over 200 pre-built destinations, including CRM systems, ad platforms, marketing automation. You can also create your own destination as well. And in between those two concepts, there are models and syncs. So for Hightouch to know what data to sync, a model must be defined. And the model defines exactly what data you want to query from the source. And typically it's defined with SQL. Alternatively, though, it can be defined with dbt models or looker looks. And once Hightouch knows what data to actually go query, a sync is then configured to map the data from the source to the destination. So the sync manages how the destination receives data from the source, as well as the frequency of the pipeline itself. So just to summarize here, a source is where you actually pull data from. A model is where you define what data to pull. A sync is defining what that actual pull looks like. And the destination is where you're actually sending that data to. So now one big call out here is that in the whole process of reverse ETL, data is never stored at rest. So it's simply pulled directly from your own infrastructure and sent directly into the downstream destinations, which is obviously a huge value prop for many of our customers like Chime, who are coming from highly regulated industries like fintech. It's giving them just peace of mind that their data doesn't need to be stored in yet another system. So let me jump now into the tool and give me 1 second here. Tony, Tomas, any questions in the chat while I was talking there?
No, but it's a good reminder that if anyone has questions, you can either pop it into the chat, which is open there, or into the questions section. And towards the end of the call, we'll go through those, or as we get to them.
Cool. All right. So just jumping into Hightouch, again, we're going to walk through just a couple of the basics here. One is a source. So again, we support a number of different sources. In this case, we've already set up our Snowflake as our source. And setting this up is very simple. A data owner would just come in and simply configure that source with a couple of settings. Can't scroll down here because there's a couple of passwords, but you get the point here. You're just entering in your Snowflake information. You can also go directly through Snowflake or Databricks. They have like Partner Connect, where directly within their platforms, you can set up Hightouch, and that integration will then be out of the box. Again, from a destination standpoint, all you're doing here is you're simply selecting the marketing or business operation destinations that you would want to send data to. And really what you're going to do is then just pop in your API key. So some of them have different settings, but again, it's a rather simple integration of just where do you want to point the data to. And like I said before, 200 plus destinations with custom ones that you're able to actually go and configure. So let's just jump in really quick to look at an existing sync to Salesforce so you all can get a better understanding of what that actually looks like. So in this case, let's assume that we just want to send all of our contacts from our data warehouse into Salesforce. And we have a table that already exists called public.users. Now, in this case, we're simply just using Hightouch's table selector, where I can come in and just pick from any of my Snowflake tables. In this case, again, public.users. We're not going to do any type of manipulation to that actual model, and we're just going to actually pick that from the table selector. So all this is going to do is run a query against our Snowflake, populate with our demo data in this case, and actually pull back that table. So that's our model. So in this case, we can hit save. And we're actually going to then come into our existing Salesforce sync. Now, again, this has run, I believe I set this on a manual schedule, so I just ran this 3 times, but you can set it to run at hourly syncs, at 10-minute syncs, whatever that schedule is that you would want. And you would come in and actually configure the individual settings for that sync. So for every single one of our destinations, we have a team that has built out pretty advanced settings so that you can configure every specific sync to your choosing. So in this case, we're going to sync data from Hightouch to send to Salesforce as an object, although I could do metadata or platform events. I could sync to any different objects inside of Salesforce. So I have a number of different ones here, but in this case, we're just going to do contacts. You then do certain settings like, hey, I only want to upsert, or I only want to update or insert or archive records. Again, just giving you some flexibility in exactly what you're doing. But then in this actual sync setting, this is like my favorite view to explain, as this is, I think, the one that really explains what reverse ETL is doing. You're saying take these columns from Salesforce. So in this case, this was our user table, and sync them to these fields inside of Salesforce. So from Snowflake to Salesforce, how do I actually want to go and map those fields and do that bit of transformation? Additional settings that you can do to, like, say, hey, only send a certain amount of rows per batch, or hey, maybe you want to hash PII. Again, each individual sync comes with their own different settings that you might want to set up. And you can also set pre-built templates so that you don't have to do this every single time. Again, scheduling, there's a number of different schedule types. So you can say, hey, just sync this once, set this on a certain interval, a custom recurrence. Maybe it's like every Monday at 9 a.m. You can run it with cron expressions, dbt cloud, or Fivetran. Just, again, gives you a ton of flexibility on how you actually want to go and set that data and send that data. So you also get a ton of visibility into the actual syncs themselves. So in this case, I can click in and see exactly what the payloads were, if there were any errors that fired, and exactly what fields were sent over. So it's giving you a ton of observability so that you know and have confidence in every sync that you're sending down. So that was a lot to take in, but just hopping back to that individual use case that we just talked through, I wanted to send all of my contacts, all of my user data from Salesforce from Snowflake down into Salesforce. So that was what that model was doing. And let's just say that high churn propensity score, I wanted to include that on the sync. Now that's in Salesforce, right? So now my field team, every time they log into Salesforce for account of XYZ, they can see what that churn risk is over time. Now to talk through a little bit more of an operational use case again is, well, what if I want to only look at high churn users and I want to send a Slack alert to my field team to alert them when a churn risk has passed a certain threshold. Now, using that same kind of core underlying data, I can come in here and set up my model to only look where churn score is over 20. Now, in this case, we didn't actually have a column called churn score, so I'm faking it a bit with the SQL query, but you get the point here of I'm using SQL to manipulate my model a little bit to then only look for certain churn scores and send that down. So I've defined my model with SQL there. I can actually come in now and look at my sync down into Slack, where I've configured it to send a message in a certain channel with certain text. So again, in this case, I'm pulling in fields from Snowflake like user ID, email, and engagement score to say, hey, once a row is added to this model, meaning someone has gone past the churn threshold, I want to actually fire off a Slack alert with this specific message to that specific channel. You can do things like tag team members. It gives you a ton of flexibility to actually go and fire off that alert. And again, you can set your schedule to say, hey, run this every 10 minutes. And if it's only looking for diffs, then it's only going to send updates as they occur every 10 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever your Snowflake instance is refreshing at. Again, you get full visibility, activity alerting, and sync logs so that, hey, maybe you want to actually have this data right back to the warehouse. You can also do that with sync logs. So now kind of zooming out at what this really looks like, we just set up this demo workspace where you can see we've taken a number of different models and syncs and kind of put them together so you can understand, hey, maybe I want to know if they haven't had a login in the last 30 days and send that to Salesforce. Maybe I want to know if there's a high number of support tickets to fire off a Slack alert. I can really just build out from this basic model to power each of my many use cases. And these are just two of the destinations that you could send to, right? Maybe you want to send that high churn risk user to Facebook in an audience so that you can go and run retargeting campaigns against them. It's taking the same exact models and just setting up syncs each time. So it's really quick and easy to go and power your many different use cases. Okay, so that is reverse ETL from a basic level. I know we just went through a lot. So again, let me know if there's any questions. Feel free to pop them in the chat. And now we'll talk through a little bit of the future of reverse ETL and what we are investing very heavily in at Hightouch. So give me 1 second here. Let me share my other screen. Can you all see this?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. So now while reverse ETL was our first product and one that we're still very heavily invested in, we knew that we wanted to solve data activation for much more than just data teams. So we wanted to take that same warehouse first approach, but create an entire no-code suite of tools that focuses on unlocking data activation from the warehouse for marketing and business teams alike. So not really requiring the use of SQL and giving marketers a marketer-friendly tool set. This led us to release Customer Studio, which is a suite of tools highlighted by a no-code audience builder that you can kind of see on the GIF on the screen to unlock data activation for the masses. So doing things like building audiences and sending them to Facebook and Google Ads, or building experiments and running suppression tests across channels. Again, like building upon this concept of reverse ETL and that it's warehouse centric, it's pulling off of the warehouse, but giving marketers their own UI and tool set to do so. So this new paradigm has created a new architecture that's been dubbed the composable customer data platform, where organizations can now, instead of implementing a bundled CDP solution that creates yet another data silo, simply activate audiences and other data points directly from the warehouse to go and power marketing use cases. Again, traditionally something that a CDP has been used for, but now in this new paradigm, doing it directly off of your cloud data warehouse, which, as Tomas spoke to before, is where all of your data is actually being stored centrally. So just thinking through a couple of different use cases here. One that I just like to highlight is, let's say that you wanted to target high-value customers in HubSpot with an email and Google Ads to create retargeting and lookalike. So using the LTV scores in the data warehouse, similar to the churn scores before, a marketer can come in and using the audience builder, go and define their audience and then go and send the sync down into, again, HubSpot or Google Ads, just like we had just done so using our kind of traditional platform reverse ETL, but doing so in a marketer-friendly UI. Behind the scenes, it's SQL, right? Same concepts, but giving that marketer-friendly UI. So just a couple things to quickly understand about Customer Studio. When you go into Customer Studio in Hightouch, you have to define your data model. So this is going to be specific to your business, where you tell Hightouch what exactly data points you want to look at, right? So in the case on the screen here, it's a little small, apologies, but you would have a parent model being your user table, and you would want to join that to, let's say, an event model that lives in Snowflake of purchases, or you have a related model of accounts or pets, right? Other objects that you want to tie back to. It's really just giving you the flexibility to go and define the data model that is unique to your business, which is obviously one of the biggest benefits of using the cloud data warehouse is the flexibility and all the data points being in one spot. It's just giving you a UI that can sit on top of that and really clearly define exactly what data points you want to look at when your marketers actually go and build audiences, which is then on the right-hand side. So our audience builder is simply pulling off of that data model and giving marketers the ability to go in and say, hey, give me an audience of users who have performed X action or have this certain attribute. Maybe it's churn score over a certain level, or maybe it's, in this case, brand affinity is Nike or property is VIP, right? You're using all the data points inside of the warehouse, but again, in this marketer-friendly UI. So let's hop in quick so y'all can see this. And then time check, I know we're at 11:36, so this one will be a little bit quicker. Let me share my screen. Cool. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So like I said before, the schema builder is very easy to use. It's kind of drag and drop, click around. You can add in certain tables, whatever you need to do to really define your business's data model. And it's this concept of just building upon and defining your business model as you go. So if you have one table, it would just be one table here. If you have 150, like some of our customers do, you can do that crazy mapping all inside of here in this really user-friendly visual interface. And you can have as many of these as you want. So you can test and iterate as you go. Now, the audience builder itself, just kind of coming into here for, let's just do a really simple one. Actually looking at, let's say, has property churn score greater than 70 and trial account equals false. So this is any customer who has a churn score greater than 70. And I can actually get some insight back, like who are the members of that audience, maybe what their overlap is with other audiences, or breakdowns of that actual specific audience. So I don't know if this audience is a good one, but you'll get the point here. You'll see a Venn diagram. There you go. So I know some insights about the audience that I'm building. So marketers, again, getting more comfortable with building these audiences and defining these users. A little thing here, as you build these audiences, let's say you want to actually go and send them out into different channels and you want to do some type of split test. We support experimentation so that you can do things like, hey, send 50% to Facebook and 50% to Google, right? And then I want to understand what that actual differences in performance. I can write that all back to the warehouse, which is why you're seeing this logging, so that I can go and understand what their performance is. Now, again, behind the scenes, it's the same thing from a sync perspective of that same configuration of map these fields in this way for each one of these individual audiences, right? In this case, though, you can build out templates so your marketers don't need to really do this ever. But again, you have the flexibility if you need to. Now, just other quick things in here. There is an analytics feature. So you're able to come in and do things like understand certain metrics or certain events as they occur. So maybe I want to look at the count of created support tickets over time for a specific audience. I can kind of see that inside of the UI. And I can kind of split this out as I need. Again, just pulling off of the warehouse, right? So I can group by more, just giving marketers this super user-friendly interface. Now, last one here that I'll go through, actually two more. Priority lists, able to stack rank audiences. So let's say I have a pet company and I have owners of dogs, horses, and cats, and I only want users to fit into one audience. I can stack rank that priority so that we can handle all that logic for them without complex SQL. Behind the scenes, it is complex SQL, but to the user, it's not. Now the last one is traits. So I'm able to actually come into here and define certain calculations. So let's say I want to do a count of support tickets. Well, I'll look at the count of message ID for the events that were created support ticket. And now I have that field available to go and create syncs off of and personalize and build audiences off of. So it's giving you the ability to kind of compute new fields, again, in a marketer-friendly fashion. So that was a lot there. There is a lot more to Hightouch and different use cases we can talk through, but I definitely want to jump back and kind of zoom out a little bit, make sure we have time for questions. So let me share my screen one last time. All right. So one thing to call out here is that kind of as we've completed this data activation problem, we realize that not every company is ready to activate. They need help with what we call the data readiness problem. So we talked a lot about, in the beginning, we mentioned customer 360, right? Doing things like creating customer profiles in what's typically called identity resolution. So we came out with this new toolkit that we call a Customer 360 toolkit that tackles this data readiness problem head on and gives customers the ability to improve the data that's actually residing in their warehouse. And it's composed of 3 features to come together to define, organize, and link customer records and create that 360 view of customers. So those features are the schema builder that I just walked through before, an identity resolution product directly within your data warehouse, and an enrichment product that helps teams pull in third-party data to enrich the warehouse and fill in any customer data gaps. So all of these features are highly configurable. They have the visual-friendly interfaces that declare outcomes. And again, it's all warehouse native, so no data is needed to leave the actual customer infrastructure. Really what this is saying is I have data in my warehouse. I want to go activate, but I'm not ready yet. Hightouch is giving you the tools to go and make that data ready. So identity resolution or the schema builder, or in that case, warehouse enrichment as well. And lastly, the last call out here I want to call out, we are currently in private preview, although going to GA this week, for an event collection product. So organizations who want to actually collect customer data on their website, things like page views, order completed events, product clicks, that behavioral data. We've actually created a event collection product with a number of different SDKs. It's very flexible and allows teams to really own data collection and write that data directly into the data warehouse. So that they can then, again, go and use the different pieces of our product offering to go and activate that data at scale. So how does this all come together? I know I've talked through a lot. Hightouch Events helps you get data to the warehouse as well as traditional ETL, obviously. Customer 360 Toolkit helps you resolve customer identities and profiles and really model your data in a clean fashion. And then our data activation capabilities sit on the back end as that final mile to go and actually send data out to your many different tools. So we like to call this a complete and composable customer data platform, in that it runs on your data infrastructure. So it's never storing any copies of your data. Your organization already has data storage, which is the warehouse. And we believe that that should be the thing that is powering the rest of your CDP type of use cases. It's schema agnostic. So we don't really care what data you actually have or what it should look like. You can just tell us and you bring your schema to us. The composable CDP is modular and interoperable. And as you can kind of see in the GIF on the screen, you can use whatever different components you want, really just giving you the flexibility to build your own stack the way that fits your business, while again, giving you that complete offering if you so choose. And the last one is that's unbundled pricing. So you only need to pay for the capabilities you use and not the shelfware that comes with the entire platform. All right, that is all I got. So Tomas, Tony, I will hand it back.
That was awesome, Alec. Thanks so much. You've shared some really revolutionary concepts, and especially thinking about complicated problems like identity resolution and event collection. And it's nice to know I don't have to write those complex integration scripts anymore, and also that I don't need to implement a whole lot of software that I didn't need to get there, given that it's composable. So yeah, awesome stuff. Tomas, how are businesses adopting their strategies with transformative tools like this?
Well, with the addition of these new technologies to their tech stack, businesses are able to incorporate more value from their data into their day-to-day operations. So this enables them to adopt a much more data-driven approach to their processes. This can manifest in various ways based on their core businesses, but some examples include proactive communications towards their customers or simply providing much more up-to-date information to frontline colleagues.
Great, thanks. And Alec, from your experience, what challenges are businesses encountering as they, work towards these journeys with capabilities like what you've shown us?
Yeah. So it's honestly, this architecture is bringing data and marketing teams closer together than ever before, right? So it's aligning with the team, making sure that they understand your many use cases, what data you need available, and making sure that the data is in the right place, right? This entire model is based on the fact that your warehouse actually has the right data. So it's just making sure that your teams are aligned from a marketing and a data perspective, which is a little bit different for some organizations, but kind of as we've talked through before, all organizations are starting to adopt this model in the cloud data warehouse. So it's something that just is coming no matter what.
Awesome, thanks. So for folks in the audience, please populate any questions that you have, and we'll be diving into those as well as some burning questions that I have, frankly. And while you're putting those in there, I'll just jump straight into some questions that I have. So, Tomas, what's the next thing? Where does this go? What's the frontier of data integration from your perspective? So if it was October 3rd of the year 2025, what are we talking about on this webinar?
Well, I believe the coming years will bring further developments of cloud technologies, enabling companies to leverage the capabilities, for example, of multiple cloud providers all at the same time. This multi-cloud approach will bring with it, among others, the benefits of further scalability and more robust operations. In my opinion, we will see some further advancement in the hybrid cloud model as well. Companies will connect even more of their on-premise systems to cloud networks, advancing their current use cases even further. And as for technology, we are sure to be on the lookout for data lakehouses, as they hold immense potential, combining the capabilities of traditional data warehouses with the flexibility of data lakes. And of course, with the growing demand and availability of data, the needed security and data governance will have to become a focus point as well. So we will see advancements in this sector as well.
Awesome. Okay. And Alec, one quick question before we start jumping into the questions from the audience. The opposite question of what I asked Tomas. What are we not talking about on that webinar 2 years from now?
Yeah. So we're not talking about data silos, right? We're not talking about separate systems with separate data stores that you're trying to all pull together, right? In this world, organizations are really treating the data cloud and the data warehouse as that central store. And whether it's ETL tools or event collection tools, whatever it may be, they will have all the capabilities that they need to go and centralize that data. So meetings like trying to align your data team and your marketing team on what the source of truth is, that will go away, hopefully, fingers crossed. And we'll really just be working on these activation and AI workloads, like just enhancing the data that you have inside of the warehouse for those downstream use cases.
Super, super helpful. So let's extend on that question. So imagine it's not a case of data silo or not data silo. It's a case, and this is, I'm paraphrasing an audience question here. What if there's really kind of no historical data? It's a newer company or a brand new company. They're growing, but they don't have data in a CRM or Snowflake. How do you kind of get started and grow into these kind of things? And I'll open that to either of you.
Yeah, I can start, and I know Tomas, I think you have some thoughts on this one too. But one of the beautiful things about this approach is you can really start where you are and use the data that you have. So if you don't have historical data, that's okay. If you have just a list of email addresses that you are uploading in some capacity into your warehouse, whether it's from field events, whatever it may be, as ugly as that data could be, you can just get it to the warehouse and start to use it. Build an audience in Facebook, build an email targeting list in HubSpot, right? And as you go every step along that journey, you're simply adding one more table. You're adding identity resolution. You're adding a new model, a new activation use case. So it's very common for us and our customers to do these, what we call land and expand, where like they land on just one use case, right? And then over time, as they have more and more, and they've kind of gotten used to this model, they expand a lot more into more and more use cases, more channels, and more personas actually using the tool.
Great. And for the other question from another question from the audience, like, can you talk to kind of the lag with some of these things in terms of, how quickly these pipelines run? How, what does it think about from a latency perspective? If, for example, we're doing a marketing email off of this, are we waiting hours and hours? I know you talked a little bit about scheduling for sort of things that we want to have on a particular day and time, but what if there's a need for speed? Is there a lot of latency in these things?
Yeah, so traditional reverse ETL is entirely dependent on the latency of your warehouse, right? So if your warehouse is loading every 10 minutes, you can activate data out every 10 minutes, right? If it's loading data once a day, you're only going to be able to activate data once a day, right? Now, with this event collection product that we are building and are going to GA with this week, the next iteration of it in the next month or two, I believe a month and a half, is going to be event streaming. So if you need to take event data from your website and go directly into an iterable to power an email campaign, you will have that ability to go and route that real time. Now, you lose a little bit of the benefit of being able to use all the data in the warehouse and enrich it. And so it's kind of a trade-off there between need for speed and need for actual like enrichment or modeling. But yeah, it's really up to you, your specific use case, and then how fast your warehouse is actually computing and making data available.
Great. And Tomas, how does, there's this thing that's come up here recently, I think it's called ChatGPT. How does AI fit into all this? Like, can I put this GPT stuff somewhere in these pipelines and personalize content or process things? How does that fit into this?
I believe that's the beauty of this whole cloud and the modular design that we're talking about, that you can fit all kinds of things together. And I'm not currently familiar with any APIs that are directly integratable into these pipelines, but I believe this shouldn't be something that's completely off the map for the future. But I'll add, if you have any info on this, then just please add it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that sorry. No, I was just going to say, the way that I think about AI and how it's tied to all of this, activation use cases, it's powering those AI, right? Like it's all, your AI is sitting on top of the warehouse on the raw data that you have. It's training models, it's outputting churn propensity, and then you're activating it to go and actually power those downstream use cases.
Yep. And Alec, I assume somewhere maybe on Hightouch's website, there's a nice list of all the systems that you have pre-baked connectors to.
Yep, I can share it in the chat, but there is a full page on the site with a catalog of our destinations as well as our sources, if you're curious if yours are supported.
Awesome. I think the next question, like, Tomas, if a company doesn't have Snowflake, they don't have Databricks, they don't have any data warehouse or data lake or data lake warehouse, lake house, etc., all the different terms, how would a company get started with something like a data warehouse?
Well, the trick of starting out with a data warehouse is to be forward-looking from the beginning. Building a data warehouse in the cloud is simple nowadays. Sort of simple, of course. It is really important to choose the right technology at the start, however, as this technology is going to be the backbone of your data infrastructure for the long run. Many companies fall into the trap of choosing tools that seem easy to use and sufficient for the needs of the time without planning for the long run, and end up having to redo their entire data platform in a couple of years as their demand for data rises above the capabilities of their tools. And believe me that this is the expensive part of data warehousing. So the beauty of the modern data stack is that it's a very flexible thing. There's no need to change key components of the infrastructure when scaling up from a few hundred megabytes of data to many terabytes. If you're planning to start out with a data warehouse, then it's probably a good idea to seek expert advice on the question, as quick and dirty solutions tend to bite back on the long run.
Great. Alec, in your demo, there was a sort of from to, so from Snowflake to Salesforce, and it was, I think, conveniently sort of the same content from one to the other. What kind of, if I need something more complicated than that, like I go from a list of industries to primary industry, or who knows, what kind of transformations, lookups, those kind of things can I perform on data during the reverse ETL process?
Yeah, so that's really where warehouse enrichment comes into play. Whether you are doing that through, like, let's say you're on Snowflake and you use their data marketplace and you want to enrich your data, you can just do that directly in the warehouse. So all of that transformation can happen. You can pull in your various data sources. If you go buy data, you can ETL it in, whatever it is, right? That transformation is happening in the warehouse. Now we are supporting this warehouse enrichment product, which is going to also allow you to do things like hit a clear bit, right? Like pull more information back from sources. To your point, if you want to tie an account user to like accounts and you don't have that data, you can do that type. Now in the traditional reverse ETL flow, that transformation that is in literally the term reverse ETL, the T is more so talking about manipulation of the data points. So saying like, hey, map this column in this way, or as you saw, I faked a churn score, right, from a different column. That type of manipulation and transformation, and then the mapping process, of course. So you have a couple different levers you want to pull. The bigger transformations and enrichments will happen inside of your actual cloud or data warehouse, though.
Got it. And you mentioned Clearbit. For anyone in the audience not familiar, what is Clearbit?
Yeah, Clearbit is a enrichment service that has like B2B specific data. So if I want to understand things like what account should I tie this user to, like a Clearbit would give you information about that company, that account, whatever it may be. It's very
Great.
B2B specific.
Thanks. Tomas, what kind of technical or other skills do I need to get started with all this?
Well, there's no need for special skills to get started with reverse ETL, I believe. However, understanding your data to know what you need to sync is a must. You also need to be able to handle your reverse ETL tool, of course. And this might also mean that you need some other skills like SQL, but it all boils down to the tool that you are planning to use.
Great, thanks. Well, it looks like there aren't any other questions from the audience here. So, I'd go here, sorry. Yeah, so as we come to a close of this webinar, first and foremost, thanks to the audience. Appreciate you investing time in attending and for your questions. Also, a big shout out thanks to Tomas and Alec. Their insights and the exceptional things happening at their companies are amazing and instrumental in terms of the future of data management and synchronizing and frankly, understanding what customers are doing. And I encourage anyone in the audience to reach out to any of these companies and better understand their services and offerings. And I think to the audience, thank you for all the curiosity and participation. And until next time, please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.